This case happened in the year 2014, and it is the case of Dan Markel. Now, I've been following this case for a while now. There was a trial that just finished this month, which is what has made it kind of current again, even though the crime occurred in 2014. And this is one of the most twisted, complicated crimes out there. Like, the first time I heard about it, I had a hard time following what was going on because there are a lot of people, and I'm the kind of person who can't remember people's names that well. So if you list off all these different people, like 10 seconds after I heard someone's name, I don't remember who they are. So when I tell the story, I am going to try to make it easier to follow by reminding you who everyone is as I go. That's kind of how I would like to have it presented to me. Alright, so here we go. Let's start off with some information on Dan Markel. He was born in Montreal, Canada, on October 9th, 1972. He was raised in Toronto by both parents. He was a highly intelligent person, and he moved to the US to go to college at Harvard, where he studied politics and philosophy, and he graduated magna cum laude. He attended graduate school at both the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and Emmanuel College in Cambridge, England. In 2021, he completed law school at Harvard and got his JD, or his law degree. He would go on to specialize in criminal law. In the year 2004, he was working in Washington, D.C. for a law firm, and that is when he met a woman named Wendy Adelson. So let's just stop right there for a moment so that I can tell you about Wendy. She was born on April 22nd, 1979, and was raised in Coral Springs, Florida. Her parents' names were Donna and Harvey, is when she met Daniel Markel. So now we're back where we left off before. Wendy and Dan met on JDate. It's an online dating site for Jewish singles. And they were a perfect match. They both were highly passionate about the law. And they were very happy together. They decided to get married. And 2 years later, in 2006, they had the marriage in South Florida, which is where Wendy was from. And her parents paid for the wedding, it seems. You know, that happens, right, in some families. And Dan had made one request, and that was he asked if the food could be kosher at the wedding. Not because he was extremely religious, but he wanted the rabbis who were leading the marriage ceremony, he wanted them to be able to stay for the reception and enjoy the food. And he was led to believe that they were going to make the food kosher. Now, Donna, who is Wendy's mother, she decided not to do it that way, but she never told Dan. So he found out about the change in the food on the day of the wedding. And that was kind of the first sign of what was to come. The first sign of how he would be treated by Wendy's family. Now, both Dan and Wendy got teaching jobs at Florida State University at the law school. They were seen by their friends as an ideal couple. They were both so happy and successful, and they called each other Mr. and Mrs. Bear. The couple had 2 sons, one in 2009 and one in 2010. The children were Dan's #1 priority. Even though he had a career that was extremely busy, he made sure that they remained the most important thing in his life, and he spent lots of time with them. Wendy expressed her desire to move down south to where her family lived. You see, Tallahassee is about 700 miles north of where her family was living. And 700 miles is a big trip. You're either taking a quick flight or you're driving for an entire day. And she missed spending time with her family, and she wanted the kids to be able to see their grandparents more. And Dan had tried to find an equivalent job down there, but he was not successful, so they stayed in Tallahassee. Wendy began feeling like she was always in Dan's shadow. She felt that he looked down on her, and she was not his equal. 6 years into their marriage, she wrote a fiction book that was called This Is Our Story. And she asked Dan to read it, but he wouldn't. He said he doesn't like fiction books, so he wasn't gonna read it. And that was very hurtful to her. Now, Dan was traveling a issue that they had was that Wendy wanted to relocate with the children down to Miami. And of course, Dan was not about to let that happen for obvious reasons. He wanted to see his kids as much as she did, and having them down in Miami 700 miles away was not in his best interest as far as being able to see the kids. So he petitioned the court not to allow that to occur. And this made Wendy's mother, Donna, very, very angry at Dan. And she would go on to write lots of emails to Wendy talking about how angry she was. And she referred to Dan as Jibbers, Jibbers, which is some kind of insult. I never heard of it. And she would suggest ways for Wendy to try to make life miserable for Dan. One of the ideas was for Wendy to threaten to have the children baptized as Catholic. Now, side note, I don't know how that makes any sense. Yeah, it would make him mad. But Wendy's family was Jewish too. They were all Jewish. So why would they want to get the boys baptized Catholic? Maybe it was a joke. I don't know. That just sounds beyond spiteful and ridiculous. But I'm adding that now because I won't remember to mention it at the end. Anyway, things started to settle down a little bit. Wendy stayed in Tallahassee, and they both got new love interests. Wendy found a man who also worked at FSU. He was a professor in social work, and his name was Jeff. And Dan found a girlfriend in New York. I don't know how that was going to work out, but whatever. And things were settling down, as I said. Now, let's move to the date of the crime. It was July 18th, 2014. And Dan had just gone to the gym. It was 11 in the morning around that time, and he left the gym and started driving home. He was on the phone with a friend, and when he got to his house, he said to the friend that there was a stranger there. Next thing you know, there's 2 gunshots. The next door neighbor runs out to find a Toyota Prius driving away. And he sees that Dan is in the car, but unresponsive, has been shot in the face. And the window has been shattered by the gunshot. So the neighbor calls the police, who come right down, and they immediately take Dan to the hospital. But sadly, he passed away by the next day. And there was no evidence left at the scene of the crime that was of any value. So all they knew was that possibly the criminal or criminals were driving a Prius. That's all they had. So the first thing they did was call down Wendy to the police station because she was his ex-wife. So it seemed like a good place to start. And they told her what had happened. They said he was shot, he was in the hospital, and he was not going to live. Because at this time it was the day of the shooting. she cried and she said she knew nothing about it. They checked her phone, she handed it over. They dusted her hands for gunpowder. She was cleared. She was not the killer. She told them that maybe it could be her boyfriend, Jeff, the professor that she was dating, Jeff. Maybe it was him because he hated Dan, because she always talked about, what a bad husband Dan had been. So obviously her boyfriend hated him, so the police should look at that guy. She also said that her brother, whose name was Charlie, the dentist, he used to joke about, or at one time he joked about how it was cheaper to buy her a TV than it would be to hire a hitman. So he bought a TV for her as a divorce gift instead of a hitman. And she said it was a total joke, though. He would never do such a thing. He's a jokester. So, right after the murder, she took her kids and moved down to Miami. She also changed their last name from Markel to Adelson, which was a big slap in the face to Dan's family, who felt that she was trying to just erase Dan's entire existence. Anyway, the police called in her boyfriend, the one that she said they should look at, Jeff. And when they brought him in, he was already breaking up with her. He was in the process of breaking up, or they were broken up. And he had an alibi. He was out of town at the time of the murder, so it was not him. But he did have some information. He said that Wendy's brother, Charlie, was not joking about hiring a hitman. He was completely serious about it. And that Charlie had even looked into it in the year 2013. This guy also went on to say that Wendy's entire family was obsessed with hating Dan Markel. He said it was their hobby to hate him. For the next 2 years, the case was basically just inactive, or, so it seemed on the outside. It was active behind the scenes, but as far as the public was concerned, there was nothing going on, no arrests, no suspects, no nothing. Whoever had done it had gotten away with it, it seemed. But finally, investigators were able to figure out who was driving that Toyota Prius. So what had happened was they looked at the surveillance footage from the gym that Dan had been to that morning, and they saw that there was a Toyota Prius at the gym that followed him when he left. And then they were able to follow this Prius a little bit by using, other surveillance cameras in the area. They could not see the license plate, but they were able to see that there was a sun pass in the window, and that is if you've never heard of a sun pass, it's a toll booth pass thingy, an electronic toll booth. I don't know how to explain it. You know what I'm talking about. It pays he was actually in prison by this time. He wasn't in prison at the time of Dan's murder, though. But now he was in prison. He was in the Latin Kings gang, and he was serving 12 and a half years for an unrelated crime. So meanwhile, they needed to do some more digging before they brought this out to the public. They check the phone records of these two guys at the time of the crime, at the time of Dan's murder. And they see that these guys had spoken with a woman named Catherine Magbanawa. We are going to call her Katie from now on. Katie. So these two guys, Louis and Sigfredo, spoke with Katie at the time of the murder. And then this woman, Katie, then made a phone call to none other than Charlie Adelson, who is Wendy's brother. The guy who was a dentist who works with his father at the dental practice, okay? So now we have 4 people who are connected, maybe, to the murder. We have these 2 criminals, Louis and Sigfredo. We have this woman, Katie, who was a middleman, it seems, and then we have Charlie, who possibly ordered a hit, right? Now, Katie, who is Katie? Why is she involved? What is her connection? Katie was the girlfriend of Charlie at the time of the murder. She was also involved with Sigfredo. He was, or he is, her baby daddy, or the father of her child. Okay, so, are you following? I know it is messy. They dig around some more, and they find that Katie was receiving money from the dental practice. You know, the place where Charlie works. She was receiving checks from there signed by Donna. Donna is the mother of Charlie and the mother of Wendy and the office manager of the dental practice. So she was signing checks for Katie. But Katie does not work at the dental practice. No, she doesn't. They also found that the dental practice was helping to pay for Katie's new car and helped pay for her breast augmentation surgery. Okay, so they have this information, but they are still not jumping on it. You know, they gotta get all their ducks in a row before they start bringing the people in. You know how that works. But the police are painting a picture, and let me just, if it's not clear to you, I'm just gonna tell you the picture. The picture is this. Donna, Wendy's mother, being upset that her daughter cannot move to South Florida, decides the best thing to do is to kill Dan. Now, this is not factual, this is just the idea, okay? So, this is what it seems to be. So, Donna, the mother of Charlie and Wendy, says to Charlie, can you take care of this? Can you find someone who can get rid of Dan? Now, he has this girlfriend at the time. He asks her if she knows anybody who could, get rid of Dan. And she says, yeah, my child's father, Sigfredo, he's a criminal, he could do it. Donna will be safe behind all these people, right? And then, once Dan is gone, Wendy can freely move down to South Florida. And so far, if that was their plan, things worked out because Dan's gone, Wendy moved down south with the kids, and nobody got in trouble, and it's been 2 years. So the police set up a sting operation. They sent an undercover FBI agent out there. He confronts Donna, Charlie and Wendy's mother. He confronts her in the street. And he talks, real tough, street-like, He tells her he's the brother of one of the hitmen and he needs $5,000. And then he hands her a letter which tells her the phone number to call to work it out with him. And he leaves. And she's all shook up in the street there. So she goes home, she calls him. And on the phone, he's talking real tough to her still. He's talking really angrily. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, I'll call you back. Now this is all being recorded by the FBI. They're hearing this conversation. They've tapped everyone's phones. Next thing she does is she calls Charlie, and they proceed to have a very cryptic conversation, which you can't, none of it would be good as evidence, but it was obvious that, if you were listening, you would know they're guilty of something. So they get off the phone saying they'll talk later. And then Charlie calls Katie, and they've got this, they're recording this as well. So he calls Katie, who is no longer his girlfriend. They already broke up now. It's 2 years later. And he says to her, you gotta find out who this is and nip it in the bud. And she's like, I don't know who this is. Because she didn't know who it is. It was an undercover FBI guy. So after all that, the two hitmen are charged with first-degree murder in May of 2016. So remember, the crime occurred in July of 2014. Now, in October of 2016, so a few months later, after the arrest, Luis Rivera, one of the hitman who was already in jail, the member of the Latin Kings, he accepts a plea deal. And in exchange for his confession and telling everything that happened, he will get a reduced sentence. They will give him 19 years to serve concurrently with his sentence that he is already serving. So he was serving a 12-and-a-half-year sentence. Now they're just, running the 19 along the same timeline, and it's really only 6.5 years, right? 12.5, 19 minus 12.5, 6.5 years, something like that. So it's a good deal for him. And he goes on to tell them that he was hired by his friend Sigfredo. And Sigfredo said that he was hired by the lady. The lady. We don't know who is the lady. So he doesn't know her name. And he said that the reason that they were going to kill Dan was because this lady wanted to get custody of her kids. That's all he knew. And he was going to get a third of $100,000 for doing this. He claimed that he didn't even know they were actually going to kill him at first. And he had suggested that they just not even do this, that they just go and rob the woman of the $100,000 and just skip the murder altogether. But anyway, he said that they had gone to Dan's house and Sigfredo got out and shot Dan, and then they drove away and dumped the gun. He said that after all that, they called Katie to let her know that it was done. month, October of 2016, Katie was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. She is actually offered full immunity if she will confess and give all the details of what happened. But would you believe that she turned it down? She turned down full immunity. And if you're wondering why, she was not dating Charlie, like I said, but in order for her to confess, she would have to tell what Sigfredo did, and that is the father of her child. So that explains why she did not accept the deal. So Katie and Sigfredo were tried together. Prosecutors claimed that Charlie had arranged to pay Katie, plus the two hitmen, Louis and Sigfredo, $100,000 altogether to commit the murder of Dan, so that Wendy could get full custody of the boys. And the star witness at the trial was, of course, Louis Rivera, the hitman, who had accepted the plea. And he obviously came on the stand and said that he had been hired by Sigfredo to assist with the murder and that Katie was behind it. So then Katie took the stand in her defense, saying that she had nothing to do with this whatsoever. She also said that she believes that Charlie is guilty. The jury found Sigfredo guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 30 years for conspiracy to commit murder. As far as Katie, she gets a mistrial because there is a hung jury. Katie stayed in prison awaiting a retrial, which she had in 2022. And at that trial, she was found guilty. And she got the same sentence as Sigfredo. So now, Katie, Louis, and Sigfredo are all in prison for the murder of Dan. At this point, it is 2022. So we've got like all the hitmen and the middleman, but what about the people who wanted him dead? What is going on with that? Look at how many years have passed since the crime. Well, that was all about to change. You see, in 2016, at the time of the sting operation, they had made a recording of a conversation between Katie and Charlie. And it was impossible to hear it because there was so much noise in the background. They were it looked like a restaurant or something. But 6 years after the recording was made, they were able to enhance it enough so that they could figure out what was being said. So, in 2022, this is what they came to realize that Charlie said on the recording to Katie. Quote, "If you're going to charge me, charge me. They didn't mention my name, which makes me think these people only know part of the story. If they had any evidence, we would have already gone to the airport." End quote. And the investigators felt that this was what they needed to go ahead and charge She had told Sigfredo that Charlie's family was planning on offering Dan Markel $1 million if he would allow Wendy and the boys to move to South Florida. So, Sigfredo had taken it upon himself to go get the murder done, and now he wants a third of $1 million for having done so. Katie supposedly told Charlie that if he didn't give them the money in 48 hours, he would be killed. Anyway, I guess nobody believed the story that Charlie told, because on November 6th, 2023, Charlie Adelson was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation to commit murder. Sentencing will be in December, so we don't have a sentence yet. But I would assume it won't be less than these other 3 people got. So it's basically life in prison, with some extra years added. That's what I would assume, but we have yet to find out. After I finished recording this case, I came to find out that there had been an update involving the arrest of Donna Adelson. So I am adding this little update here. I am going to read to you from an article on the NewYorkPost.com. It is called Mom of Florida Dentist Convicted in Murder for Hire Plot Arrested While Allegedly Trying to Flee to Vietnam. This was published on November 15th, 2023. The mother of a Florida dentist convicted last week in the contract killing of his former brother-in-law was arrested in an airport while allegedly trying to flee the country and charged with orchestrating the twisted murder-for-hire plot. Donna Adelson, 73, the matriarch of a wealthy family of dentists, was taken into custody Monday night at Miami International Airport as she and her husband Harvey were about to use one-way tickets to Vietnam via Dubai, 2 countries without extradition treaties with the U.S. She was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation in the 2014 death of prominent Florida State University law professor Dan Markel. Leon County State Attorney Jack Campbell said he already planned to charge the family matriarch with the plot, but sped up those plans when investigators learned she planned to flee. It was going to be complicated and really difficult trying to bring them back depending on where they ended up in the world, Campbell said. The arrest was not just based on the flight, but that played a part in the timing. In the days leading up to her arrest, Adelson discussed getting things in order with plans for either suicide or to flee to a non-extradition country in calls with her son Charlie after his guilty verdict, according to recently filed court documents. She is now being held at Miami-Dade County Jail without bail pending her transfer to Tallahassee. Okay, so that is the end of my update, and I will return you back to the regular video already in progress. And that is the case. was involved in the murder is now behind bars. What about Wendy? Does she have anything to do with it? I mean, I really don't know. I don't see anything that stands out that says to me, oh, that means she knew. You know, when she was first brought to the police station, why was she offering up the story about Charlie saying that he, wanted to give her a gift of hiring a hitman? Why did she even mention that? Like, I don't know. But she might have something to do with it. Like I'm saying, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I find it hard to imagine that her family would plan out this murder and yet not even tell her. Wouldn't you think that they would say, hey, this is what we're gonna do, how do you feel about it? Because we're talking about the father of her children. And, that is a serious thing. As much as most people might dislike their ex-husband or ex-wife and want them to be out of the picture, most do not want their family to commit murder for it to happen, and they don't want their children to lose the parent, if you follow what I'm saying. So I would think that she would be part of the discussion, but I really don't know. So I'm gonna have to go 50-50 on her. And what about the father, Wendy's father, Harvey, Donna's husband? I haven't heard anything at all about him. Is it possible he has nothing to do with it? I'm not sure about that either. I would imagine that he knew about it, but I haven't heard a thing implicating him. Now, overall, I think that this whole plan, not only was it evil, but it was stupid. Did they think that if they put enough layers between themselves and the crime that they would never be found out? Like Donna thinks, I want to get Dan killed, so let me ask Charlie to work it out. And then Charlie says, alright, let me ask my girlfriend if she knows somebody. She'll be a middleman here. She'll hire somebody. I won't speak to anybody. These people won't know me and they won't know my name. So Katie gets, Sigfredo, and then Sigfredo, he needs to hire someone else too. So you have this whole string of people involved. The way I see it, the more people that you involve in a murder plot, the more likely you're going to get caught. You're all going to go down. Because it only takes like one person